This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. As the cloud of smoke starts to lift in parts of the province, Manitobans are learning about the devastation left in the wake of wildfires. For some, their homes and happy places are destroyed. CBC's Josh Crabb spoke to some people coping with the loss.
Let's go down memory lane here.
Decades of history are now all that remain of John and Lorraine Podwarniak's cabin. John built and shared it with a friend and spent years enjoying the remote lakefront property with his own children and grandchildren.
Taking the kids up there and, they're swimming in the lake, we go fishing, then they get on the bow of the boat, they jump in the lake.
It was located in Nopaming Provincial Park at Beresford Lake, where the Manitoba government says around 20 structures have been damaged. An additional 19 in seasonal sites have burned at Black Lake, also in Nopaming. Podwarniak got confirmation last week in a phone call from the province. His place was destroyed in the Bird River fire.
We kind of expected it, but it was hard. It was just like you're numb. From the news.
The massive wildfire has burned more than 100,000 hectares in and around Nopaming. Richard Loisel's family cabin was also among those that have been destroyed at Beresford Lake, a log cabin his family already rebuilt once after losing a previous one in the same spot to wildfire in 1983.
My dad's always said, a thing can be replaced. Yes, all of our mementos and all of the memories will stay with us. The pictures will stay because we have copies, but the things can be replaced.
The Podwarniaks aren't sure yet if they'll rebuild. They're going to sit down as a family before making a decision. They plan to go out to the lake together with their kids to see the damage for themselves once the park reopens and it's safe for them to go back.
With the climate change, I guess the heat waves and the dryness of the forest, it's going to keep happening. And I don't know what you can do to prevent that.
They're still processing the reality their cabin is gone.
We had insurance on it, so we're okay that way. We don't have no insurance on the memories.
Memories they're holding on to tighter after losing such a special place. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meanwhile, some parts of the Whiteshell Provincial Park reopened today. The province says the wildfire along the Ontario border and inside the park is still out of control. However, progress has been made to reopen select areas at a safe distance from the fires. Among the areas reopening are Falcon Lake and Barron Lake in South Whiteshell, Sylvia Lake, Eleanor Lake, Dorothy Lake, Otter Falls, Barrier Bay, Nudimick Lake, and Batula Lake in North Whiteshell. Campgrounds remain closed. All hiking trails and water routes remain closed and backcountry travel is prohibited. A full fire ban is still in place. Meantime, police are now investigating a possible arson in the same area. A cottage that once belonged to disgraced former fashion mogul Peter Nygaard went up in flames in Falcon Lake. This is surveillance footage submitted by a realtor in the area. A separate video captured the cottage explode. RCMP say they got word of the fire just before 9 last night. When they reached it, it was engulfed in flames. No one was hurt. Well, the cause is unknown. RCMP say there's a strong possibility it's arson. Nygaard sold the multi-million-dollar property in 2021 after he was arrested for sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the United States. A report by Manitoba's Ethics Commissioner says former Premier Heather Stefanson and 2 of her cabinet ministers broke the law. The report says they acted improperly by pushing for the approval of a mining project after the Tories lost the election. CBC's Ian Fraze joins us live in the newsroom. Now, Ian, before we get to the actual ruling, how did we get to this point?
Well, you may recall the controversial proposal to mine for silica sand in southeastern Manitoba. Now, the NDP turned it down, but before then, the former Progressive Conservative government was accused of trying to approve the project after losing the 2023 election, but before the NDP was sworn in. If true, that would violate the Caretaker Convention. a principle that forbids outgoing governments from making major decisions. Ethics Commissioner Jeffrey Schnoor has been investigating that for more than a year.
So today, the commissioner's report was released. Let us know what it said. Did the Tories break the law?
Yeah, he is recommending fines against 3 MLAs, a punishment that's never happened before in Manitoba. Former Premier Heather Stephenson, former Cabinet Ministers Cliff Cullen and Jeff Wharton are being fined between $10,000 to $18,000 each. The commissioner says the MLAs knew they were violating the Conflict of Interest Act, but did it anyways. Here's Premier Wab Kinew.
This is making history by the PCs in Manitoba for all the wrong reasons. A discredited, tired government that ran ads about the landfill search, that ran ads targeting trans children, lost that desperate election campaign, and then ignored your choice for a new government.
Meanwhile, PC leader Obi Khan says he accepts the ruling but wouldn't blame anyone on the Tories, saying there was confusion.
What I've briefed on is that the conflict of interest commissioners thought something and the MLAs thought something, and that led to the rulings that he's found today.
However, the commissioner says the 3 MLAs were part of a meeting about the caretaker convention 2 months before the election in 2023, and they knew the rules. It's now up to the legislature to vote on these recommendations. Brittany.
All right, thank you, Ian. That's CBC's Ian Fraze. No more rummaging for coins for parking. Drivers will no longer be able to use cash to pay for street parking in the city. But no, this doesn't mean it will be free. Instead, the city says everything is moving to an app. CBC's Zubina Ahmed has more.
Paying for parking in Winnipeg is about to change. The city will start removing pay stations for on-street parking starting July 2nd. They'll all be gone before Labor Day. That means no more coins. Instead, you have to use an app. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the phasing out of 3G networks will make the current pay stations inoperable.
You know, technology changes so fast. To replace the parking meters, it'd be kind of like going to VHS tapes in a Netflix world. Things are changing rapidly, and so this is about moving ahead with the times.
Gillingham says over 80% of the people are using apps and 90% pay by credit card for parking. And this will also save the city millions of dollars.
We only have 250 stations, like pay stations, left. So when you think of it, to replace those 250 stations would be $3.6 million plus $1 million in operating costs. We need to try to consistently look for value for money for the residents of Winnipeg.
What do Winnipeggers say about this change?
I think it's kind of getting to that point now. Everything's kind of moving forward, and contactless payments make everything easier. It's just kind of, you know, no muss, no fuss. You can just park.
Can be a problem for people that don't have a phone or have another way to do that.
Lisa Patterson from Winnipeg Parking Authority says more pay-by-phone signage will be put up as the pay stations are removed. She says those who prefer using cash can purchase prepaid parking booklets.
So if you know friends and family that are coming in and around the downtown, or you're having visitors or guests that are visiting you, and you know that they're going to be coming to the exchange or in and around downtown, go ahead right now and purchase the prepaid parking booklets.
Patterson says booklets will be available to buy at one of the city's 311 counters or the parking store on Portage Avenue. Meanwhile, pay stations in private lots will not be affected, and meters will also remain in the Millennium Library Parkade. Sabina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The number of people infected with measles in the province continues to rise at an escalating pace. The province says there are now 60 confirmed cases and 4 probable ones. 42 of the cases were found in May alone. Public health officials say the majority of cases are in unvaccinated or under-vaccinated children who've been exposed in their communities. A number of these cases have no known contact. Riley Lachak in now. Riley, another beautiful day to get outside, or as you put it to me, a very pleasant day.
Yeah, a pleasant day, the start of what will probably be a pretty unremarkable 7-day forecast, if I'm being quite honest here. Although a little bit of instability back to the west, all part of a couple of systems that trail right down into the U.S. Midwest, parts of the eastern seaboard, into southern Ontario, getting some rain as well. That did give us a few showers throughout the day today for parts of western Manitoba, still falling today. This is the remnants of some of that rain that moved through last evening through the overnight hours and kind of trailing off throughout the day today. Anywhere from 15 up to 20 millimeters locally in some places over the last 36 hours or so. Temperatures today, Winnipeg, we got up to 20.3 degrees, dancing around 19 for much of the afternoon, but we just managed to pop up just above 20 late this afternoon. 12 in Brandon, that's where we've been under a little bit of cloud cover today. That clearing helped us propel these temperatures up just slightly today. Same case as we get through the day on Thursday, albeit clear skies tonight means we'll drop down a little bit to +5. Fairly seasonal though, 9 degrees first thing in the morning, and we'll try for 19 once again in the afternoon. I'll have your long range forecast when I come back.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
An NFL legend dropped by the University of Manitoba earlier today to talk advice for life and business. Hall of Famer Steve Young was in town to speak with people of all ages and also be presented with an award for distinguished entrepreneurs. CBC's Gavin Axelrod has that story.
He's got some room. He's going to try to dive for it. He gets it!
On the football field, he dazzled fans with moments like these while playing for the San Francisco 49ers. On Wednesday, Hall of Fame quarterback Steve Young dropped by the University of Manitoba, sharing stories from his glory days, life and business advice, and laughs.
Then I ended up being the Super Bowl MVP, and so then I had to yell into the camera after the game, now that you're going to the Super Bowl, what are you going to do? I'm not going to Disneyland. And it was like super cool.
Now, Young is part of an investment firm with billions of dollars under its management. He's also raised millions for mental health through his Forever Young Foundation, among other ventures.
We've got to take the shame out of it so that, like I always say, in the middle of the forest, if you're lost and you saw the park ranger, would you ask for directions? Like, yeah.
In a speech Wednesday, he preached accountability and to be personable, things that have helped him on and off the field.
And so I encourage you to be really good at being vulnerable enough to recognize when you've screwed up. The ability to say sorry and then to go fix it.
That resonated with Asper student Matthew Esguerra.
And that's something we need more in business, and we need some more in like our daily lives. We need more people who like do things for the interaction and for the relationship rather than transactional relationships.
It was also a pretty good day for lifelong 49ers fan Clint Kaler. He learned some things that he can apply to his job as an accountant.
I really resonated with the fact that, you know, he was not all about capitalism, like be a good person and do something for humanity and don't just chase the dollars.
And met one of his favorite players.
Being from Winnipeg, never in my life would I think that I'm going to meet Steve Young. Like, that's just insane.
Meanwhile, Young is set to receive the International Distinguished Entrepreneur Award, the highest honor given by the Associates of the Asper School of Business and the University of Manitoba. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 23-year-old Winnipegger has been charged after posting hateful rhetoric targeting visible minorities, Jewish, Muslim, and 2S LGBTQ+ people on social media. Donovan Mackenzie Ballingall was arrested last month. Police say they linked him to a number of online accounts used to post hateful content. RCMP say the investigation focused on posts made on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. He's been charged with 4 counts of willful promotion of hatred. Tire tracks and a sawed-off lock. That's all that's left behind after someone stole a trailer and snow grooming equipment at the Wildwood Community Club. Brent Prusak is a volunteer who grooms the ski trails. He says he was going to move the equipment into the facility over the weekend, but got busy. Prusak went to get it yesterday morning, and it was gone.
Personally, it makes me look at everything and go, wow, like, what else are they going to steal? The trust is now gone, and, well, we just have to look at everything and lock up everything. We're going to replace it. We're going to go on, but, yeah, it's just kind of a shock.
Prusak says the trailer and the modified Polaris and plow are worth about $75,000. He says the club doesn't have that kind of money in the budget, but says they will find a way to replace it. Police are investigating. The City of Thompson is getting a new airport terminal. It's expected to be open by the end of the year. The CBC's Sanuta Ranawake got an inside look at what's coming.
Thompson Airport's CEO shows off what's soon to be a brand new terminal. This will be the new face of Thompson's airport. The old building is sinking into the ground and too small, too crowded, and doesn't offer many services. That's according to the airport CEO, Curtis Ross.
It'll be good for the traveling public and, the people coming in and out of northern Manitoba.
The planning for the new terminal took several years, and work is expected to complete by the end of the year.
Probably 21 years of work between the community and board members and the airport tenants and staff, but it's finally the development of the new terminal building that's coming along.
Ross says while the current terminal only has a small cafe, the new one will have many more options, including potentially a sit-down restaurant.
We have 5 restaurant opportunities within the building as opposed to the one little kiosk we had in the old building.
And with all the upgrades is also a brand new water treatment plant.
The old building, you think of it, we had to haul water for 50 years there. So part of this whole development was the development of the water treatment plant that's sitting behind us on the other corner there.
The old terminal wasn't meeting regulatory standards. Ross says it might still be used as a training facility, but it continues to sink into the ground.
We sit on discontinuous permafrost, so it was a Transport Canada run facility, and they've tried many times to remediate, and it keeps settling. So at some point in time, it will be abandoned.
Ross says the terminal changes won't raise airport fees. Sanuda Ranawake, CBC News, Thompson.
It looked very nice and sunny up there, but I did note they were still wearing some pretty heavy jackets in that video, so maybe not quite that warm yet.
Yeah, nice to see the sunshine though.
Yeah, sunshine down here too. Not as warm as we've seen over really the last 2 weeks, but also not as cold.
It falls into that seasonal category, very seasonal for mid-May day. I want to take us back to last week really quickly. I want to talk about the precipitation that we saw. So this is what our percent normal precipitation map looked like. You might recall you saw this on Thursday. Much of the province getting less than half the amount of precipitation for this time of the year. Very, very dry. It still is very, very dry in parts of southeastern Manitoba, but I'm going to fast forward to this week. This is as of Monday. What a difference some rain makes. Parts of southwestern Manitoba now at 150%. That normal amount of precipitation for this time of the year. I mean, still quite dry in eastern and southeastern Manitoba. That means that fire risk still elevated in that part of the province and into the Inner Lake as well. So just keep that in mind before you do any burning, and that still parts of the province are very, very dry. So that just gives you a sense at what a good soaking rain will do, especially when it's much needed. Not a lot to talk about in the next 24 hours here. Still a little bit of cloud cover around southern Manitoba. That moves out through the overnight hours. High pressure sets in. And what that does is really make for a very unremarkable forecast as we get through Thursday into Friday. Just a bit of passing cloud, mainly sunny skies, mix of sun and clouds for some. Other than that, I really don't have a lot to talk about. Even the wind starts to die down. I know it's been a breezy few days. Started to back off a bit today, but once we get into the day on Thursday, you'll really see the numbers here falling a bit, down to 10 gusting, 20. I mean, maybe a little bit breezy at times, but yeah, we're looking at those winds also dying off. What you'll notice, though, as we get into the weekend is a rise in temperature. So the jet stream has been kind of stuck down south of the border. As we get toward the weekend, we start to get this ridge starting to build in the jet stream, and that, as we get later into the weekend, but certainly into next week, is going to allow some of those warmer temperatures into southern Manitoba, and that is going to elevate that fire risk once again. I'm not talking the 35, 36 degree temperatures that we saw last week, but certainly looking at temperatures jumping up above seasonal for this time of the year. As for tomorrow morning, a very seasonal start for most of us across the province. Boy, oh boy, 6s and 7s in the west, 8s and 9s into the Red River Valley, into northwestern Ontario, and even much of northern Manitoba, starting at 7 or 8 degrees tomorrow morning, which is where we should be for this time of the year. We'll try for 19. Maybe we squeeze a 20 out of that again as we get through the afternoon tomorrow, 20 for Friday, and then you can start to see that rise in temperatures as we get toward the weekend, Brittany, and nothing but sunshine.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Canada Post has presented its latest contract proposal to the union, representing 55,000 workers. It comes with postal employees poised to hit the picket lines Friday, their second strike in less than 6 months. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
Canada Post presented its employees with a new contract offer just days before the Canadian Union of Postal Workers is set to walk off the job. The union says it offered to hold off on its strike for 2 weeks to take time to look over this new proposal. But under the Labour Code, both sides have to agree to a pause. Canada Post won't. The corporation says after 2 years of negotiations, a resolution is urgently needed, and that delaying a deal longer isn't in anyone's interests. But the union questions the corporation's timing.
What we're saying is why didn't they give us this offer in December? Why didn't they give it to us last week? They say they have an offer for us, and they put it right up against the deadline.
Canada Post's latest offer includes a wage increase of close to 14% over the next 4 years, plus 6 additional personal days. One of the big items the two sides are at odds over is expanding delivery schedules, including on weekends. Canada Post says to compete with private companies like Amazon, it needs to deliver 7 days a week. It wants to hire part-time staff to do that. The union wants full-time employees on those shifts, but the company says it needs more flexibility.
It's really about, do we continue to try and preserve the status quo? Or do we just say it's 2025, the delivery world has changed, we're part of the delivery world, so we need to change as well.
Canada Post has warned it can't sustain itself much longer with its current business model. The Crown Corporation is effectively bankrupt. Since 2018, it's bled more than $3 billion. Earlier this year, the federal government bailed Canada Post out with a $1 billion loan because it had run out of money to keep operating. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Top financial officials from G7 countries are in Banff, Alberta for a 3-day summit. Canada's Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, and Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem welcomed their counterparts.
It's great to have you. Welcome. Nice to see you. Welcome, sir. Glad you're here. Glad to be here.
That's U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell being greeted. The G7's finance ministers and central bankers are participating in a full day of closed-door discussions. They're examining the global economy, artificial intelligence, and the war in Ukraine. The talks follow weeks of uncertainty after sweeping U.S. tariffs. The meeting is being held in advance of next month's G7 Leader Summit in nearby Kananaskis. The sexual assault trial of 5 former Hockey Canada World Junior players continues in London, Ontario. CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is outside the courthouse with more.
Another twist in the trial of the World Junior hockey players accused of sexual assault in London, Ontario. Today's proceedings were dominated by arguments over a witness's memory. Brett Howden, a former teammate of the accused who was in the hotel room where the alleged sexual assaults happened in 2018, began testifying on Tuesday. Throughout that testimony, his answer to many questions from Crown lawyer Megan Cunningham was that he couldn't remember certain details. She would direct him to look at statements he'd made to police and to a lawyer hired by Hockey Canada to help refresh his memory. After reading the statement to himself, not out loud in open court, he'd say he still couldn't remember the details. This prompted the Crown to file an application seeking permission to cross-examine her own witness. Howden was called by the Crown, not by the defense, in an attempt to be able to highlight what the Crown calls inconsistencies between his testimony yesterday and past statements he's given to investigators.
Generally speaking, the party that calls a witness shouldn't be trying to impeach the credibility of that witness, and they are not allowed to cross-examine their own witness absent an application being granted of this nature. So this is a somewhat unusual circumstance, but again, it is something that is contemplated by our judicial system, and there is a precedent for it. It does happen.
In court today, the Crown argued that Howden's memory lapses are not sincere, while the defense lawyers urged Judge Maria Carosia to reject the application. Late afternoon, the judge issued a ruling. She said she can't find that Howden was feigning lack of memory or being insincere, but she did find some inconsistencies, and so the application can proceed for certain topics. Court ended for the day with the lawyers all agreeing to come up with a path forward tomorrow morning. Howden did not resume testifying. Howden is testifying by video link from Las Vegas, where he plays hockey. He's not accused of any wrongdoing. He's been testifying about what he witnessed the night of the alleged sexual assaults. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, London, Ontario.
The Prime Minister's office has confirmed Canada is in talks to participate in Donald Trump's Golden Dome missile defense shield. The PMO says the discussions include strengthening NORAD and related initiatives like the Golden Dome. The U.S. president says the system will intercept missiles launched from anywhere, even those from space. Trump says the complex, multi-layered system will cost $175 billion and that it will be completed within his term, which ends in 2029. Trump says Canada will pay its, quote, fair share of the costs. South Africans had hoped a presidential visit to the U.S. would offer a reset in relations and a path to a trade deal. Instead, the delegation was met with claims from President Trump that the country is persecuting white minority farmers. Aaron Collins with more on an extraordinary Oval Office meeting.
The meeting started out well. Donald Trump greeted South Africa's president warmly. Inside the Oval Office, Cyril Ramaphosa played his part too, complimenting Trump, bringing some of the American president's favorite golfers along as well.
To you, you said, yes, come along and bring Gary Player, bring any else, and Retief Goosen. I brought the two of them.
Ramaphosa looking to focus on trade.
We would like to recalibrate those relations between our two countries.
Well, that reset after dozens of white South Africans arrived in the U.S. as refugees, the U.S. paying for their flight, Trump claiming they were persecuted in South Africa. Allegations the U.S. president repeated in this meeting when pressed by reporters.
How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases those people are being executed.
But Trump had a plan to make his point.
People are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one.
Playing a video he had at the ready to back up his claims.
White South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws.
Showing Ramaphosa news clippings too. South Africa's agriculture minister politely pushing back.
And it affects all farmers in South Africa, particularly stock theft. It has a disproportionate effect on small black farmers.
But in this meeting, Trump seemed most interested in hearing from the pro-golfers in the room.
It is difficult, but the guys live a great life despite everything going on.
The meeting ending much as it began, more politely but with little resolved between the two countries.
They don't want to leave.
Well, after this extraordinary hour-long meeting, there are some big questions that remain unanswered about the state of relations between the U.S. and South Africa, including whether President Trump will take part in G20 meetings set to be held in South Africa in November. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Washington.
Dozens of aid trucks have entered Gaza following an 11-week blockade by Israel. But humanitarian groups say that aid still hasn't reached Palestinians in need. CBC's Briar Stewart reports.
Some of Gaza's youngest are so hungry, they're scraping the sides of pots, trying to get the last of the soup, while others huddle together with their shattered families, preparing to bury the latest dead. Hamas keeps talking about the resistance, this man said in an interview with CBC News. Let the resistance come and sit here. They can bring their women and children. But this man blames Israel, saying these deaths are crimes, but there is no international law. Gaza health officials say dozens more have been killed in strikes in the past day, including, residents say, a 10-day-old baby. There's no end to the misery here. Israel says it's lifted its blockade on aid, but officials say none of that food has made it to the hundreds of thousands of people displaced.
This humanitarian situation is getting worse and worse, and in the same time the Israelis are putting restrictions on the access to these supplies.
The UN says the aid is being held up because Israel picked a route for the trucks, which humanitarian groups considered insecure and vulnerable to looting. The World Food Program says around 500,000 people in Gaza are at risk of famine.
This is a manufactured crisis that we are witness to.
The director of Doctors Without Borders in Canada says the country should be playing a leading role in pressuring Israel to end its war and allow in more aid.
I think it's about time that we take a cold, hard look at ourselves and we hold our leaders to account to really demonstrate strong moral courage and political will.
Benjamin Netanyahu rebuffed any criticism, saying a strike launched on a Gaza hospital last week likely killed a Hamas leader. Israel believes that 20 hostages are still alive. And while the country's prime minister said there could be an opportunity for a temporary ceasefire, he vowed that in the end, all of Gaza will be under Israeli control. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
There's a new space for Indigenous entrepreneurs, the first of its kind in Canada. It's one that will focus on economic reconciliation. CBC's Felicia Adam was there for the grand opening.
These enclosed meeting rooms are going to hold like 2 to 6 people. We consider them communal desks where entrepreneurs can come.
It's empty now, but soon these offices will become learning hubs. Spaces for opportunity, inspiring and empowering Indigenous entrepreneurs. Winido Ginide Tashke Zing Entrepreneurship Center, or WeTech.
What we talked about was building a place for us by us.
Kathleen Blue Sky is the head of WeTech. While it's the first of its kind in the country, Blue Sky says Indigenous people have always been entrepreneurs.
It's unlocking that mindset again to bring people back into the space where they naturally think as entrepreneurs and how to create their own opportunities and how to create the relationships for those opportunities to be successful.
The province put $500,000 into the center, and in collaboration with universities and colleges, participants can get certifications and micro-credentials through mentoring and training workshops.
There's a lot of potential in growing on our Indigenous graduates from the Asper School of Business, using that within our alumni and network to really give back to the communities.
Catherine Davis is part of the Asper School of Business. She's Red River Métis, and for her, the center is a place of belonging. She says taking away barriers Indigenous entrepreneurs often face.
For many years, especially when we look at Indian Act economics, Indigenous people haven't been included in the economy, and that's been purposeful, that's been intentional. So to have a center like this where Indigenous people, a First Nations-led center where there is that sense of belonging, that really, I think, sets all people up for success.
WeTech is open to Indigenous entrepreneurs from across Canada. Blue Sky says the first group will start training in July. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Riley's back in now. Riley, the one thing I keep hearing from people in my circle and from people in this newsroom huddled around your desk is what to do about their vegetables, their gardens, their flowers. Should they wait? Is it going to be okay? You're very popular.
Apparently I'm quite popular in the newsroom. You know what? We aren't looking at any real risk of frost, at least here on the Manitoba side of the border. I'll get into that in the overnight forecast because we do have a frost advisory on the Ontario side. But for at least inside the city of Winnipeg, I think we're safe from frost. Temperatures overnight the next 7 days really above 5 degrees.
Okay, good news for tomatoes and flowers.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. I'm going to start with the fire risk as we get into Thursday. I've been talking about this dry stretch that we're going into here, and you can already start to see that reflected in this fire danger forecast from Natural Resources Canada as we head into Thursday. So, I mean, no surprise, the southwest corner of the province low in terms of fire risk. All that rain has really helped to saturate everything in the southwestern corner, but where we really haven't seen any measurable precipitation, at least in the amounts that we need, are in eastern and southeastern Manitoba. And as we get into Thursday and certainly into the weekend, right now looking at high risk on the Manitoba side, extreme on the Ontario side, and do expect conditions like this to hold. I think that even by the time we get to next week, we're looking at extreme fire risk again into eastern Manitoba. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're checking for any burn bans or anything like that as we head into the weekend here, because we are looking at conditions really drying out once again. All right, your dog walking forecast. This is Cody. Thank you, Cynthia, for sending this picture in. Cody, enjoying some time by the water. Ooh, I cannot wait for those days. You can keep sending your pets to talkback at cbc.ca as always. So 9 degrees first thing in the morning. Overnight temperature in Winnipeg more like 5 degrees. We'll try for 19. Like I said earlier, maybe we squeeze 20 out of this once again in the afternoon tomorrow. Northeasterly winds, fairly variable, 15 gusting to up to 30 or so, so maybe a bit of a breeze at times. Temperatures down to 18 in Winnipeg as we head into the evening. 11 in Brandon, 17s up the western side of the province, and very seasonal across much of northern Manitoba as well. A bit of a cooler flow on shore from Hudson Bay, making things just slightly cooler, in Churchill just over freezing. So overnight temperatures, as I mentioned, looking at temperatures closer to freezing in the west, 2s, maybe 3 degrees for places like Dauphin overnight with a few clouds, 5 inside the city of Winnipeg, into northwestern Ontario, down to +4 in Fort Frances and Dryden. I'll talk about that in just a moment. 2 in Grand Rapids, and 2 to 4 degrees generally across northern Manitoba, Shamattawa at -1. There is a frost advisory for Rainy River and Fort Frances. I know Fort Frances looking at about 4 degrees tonight, but some of those lower lying areas, the potential maybe for a few patches of fog as we get into the overnight hours, or frost, I should say, into the overnight hours. Looking at temperatures closer to 20 in Thompson tomorrow afternoon, and into southern Manitoba, high temperatures close to 20 degrees as well.
All right, thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
At times, the relationship between police and some groups can be strained. For many, there are issues when it comes to accountability, to trust, and to transparency. So what should the future of policing in this city look like? Well, the Winnipeg Police Board says it wants to hear from you. Police Board Chair Marcus Chambers joins me now. Thanks for being here, Councillor.
Good evening, Brittany.
So first off, thank you. First off, I just want to get your thoughts on the current landscape and relationship that people in this city have with police and what you've heard about possible strain.
Well, through various surveys that the Winnipeg Police Board has put out there, we're seeing the relationship between community and police slowly improving, and that's something that we're very encouraged to see. But we recognize that there is a lot more work a lot more room for good work to happen. So that's why the Winnipeg Police Board is reaching out to the community to hear from the community on what they want to see in policing going forward. We've recently hired a new chief, and that new chief has been tasked with the responsibility of transformational change. So we're going out on the road to engage with Winnipeggers to find out what that transformational change that they're looking for in policing.
We know it's a big task. We know there's lots of change that can happen. So the board has launched this community consultation process. What does that entail, and what does it really look like?
Well, the information that the board receives will inform the strategic planning from 2025 to 2029. And that strategic plan is going to be brought to the Winnipeg Police Service, whose responsibility will be to operationalize this strategic plan. So again, the work of the board is to consult with the public to find out what their needs, values, and expectations are, and then work with the Winnipeg Police Service to operationalize that strategic plan.
I know we've heard in the past from some people that they don't feel heard when it comes to what they think should be happening with the service. So this isn't the first time these consultations have happened. What were some of the issues and suggestions that have previously been brought up, and were they implemented?
Yes, absolutely they were. I mean, you know, the strategic plan that was done from 2020 to 2024 informed the board of the day on things like, you know, how the service works internally, communication, you know, building relationships within the service and community, building relationships within the schools. So those were all part of what the board of the day heard back in 2020 to devised the strategic plan that took it from 2020 to 2024. And now, as different trends emerge, we want to hear from the community that will inform the strategic plan for 2025 to 2029. We also recognize that, just last week, the Winnipeg Police Service came out with stats that showed over 5 years, the stats are finally starting to trend downwards in terms of crime and violent crime, especially in the downtown area. But we recognize that there is so much more work to do. More work to do from a retail crime perspective, more work to do from a violent crime perspective, more work to do on traffic fatalities that happen in our city. There's so much more work to do. We want to hear from Winnipeggers and inform the service on what they want to see as their priorities.
Marcus, I know we've heard from some people who want to see those police wearing body cameras. We've heard about issues with how the service deals with mental health calls. What real change do you hope that this can bring? And what do you want to say to people who maybe feel like they haven't been heard in the past?
Well, again, we want to align the way that policing is done here in our community to what it is the will of Winnipeggers want in terms of keeping our community safe. The province has made a lot of investments in terms of community safety. The city of Winnipeg has made a lot of investments. Mayor Gillingham campaigned on a community safety officers team, and they've been deployed on our transit buses. There's institutional safety officers in the hospitals. We recognize that we want to have a quicker handoff of individuals that are at hospitals that could pose a problem. And so that we want to get police officers back on the street. So again, we want to hear from Winnipeggers on strategies that will help make our community safer. We have to reimagine what community safety looks like. And for that reimagination, it is hearing from citizens and it is reimagining what community safety looks like in our community.
All right, for more information on that, you can head to the city's website. Councillor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brittany.
Overseas, heavy rain in southeastern Australia has triggered flash flooding and cut off entire towns. Authorities have issued snap evacuation orders. Emergency services say crews are giving top priority to rescuing vulnerable people and those who cannot leave their homes. Rivers are above danger levels, and heavy rain is expected to continue into the coming days.
All right, and our dry stretch of weather continues across the Red River Valley. We get a bit of a drier period beginning in the west as we get through Thursday. 19 degrees, mostly sunny skies. I'm categorizing this one as a pleasant May day as we get through Thursday. Northeasterly winds, maybe a bit of a breeze at times, and that sunset now at 9:17 in the evening. We'll try for 20 as we get into the day on Friday. Sunshine continuing through the weekend, 22s. 24 for Monday, then look at what the numbers are as we get toward the middle of the week. 26 for Tuesday, and temperatures climbing closer to 30 degrees by the time we get to Wednesday. Well, now that spring is here, the new generation of Canadian geese have begun hatching. I know I've seen plenty of them in my neighborhood, little goslings just kind of tiptoeing around.
Well, at one Regina restaurant, some new hatchlings arrived right at the front door. Here's your Daily Lift. Okay, so this all started to unfold last month when a mother goose laid eggs on a planter outside a city Earls. Now, 2 of those eggs hatched on Friday. The staff quickly flocked together and helped the family of geese get to a nearby river.
Absolutely surreal. There was some other geese that were obviously very territorial of the situation, so they came to check it out immediately, and they didn't really give them any time to sink in that they were at the water now and where they needed to be. But once the other geese calmed down, then we got the babies out of the net. We really prioritized just making sure they got all together, and they were immediately in the water and so happy.
The 2 new geese are safely in the river with Mama Earlette and Papa Earl. Wildlife experts are expecting the geese to return to their nest at the Earls next year as well. Now, the restaurant did work with a wildlife rescue to make sure that all laws were followed and that everybody was safe and everybody got to the river okay.
And I do know that our producer Holly here says she would have liked to have seen it being Mama Earlene.
I know.
Yeah, she didn't like the name. She thought she had a better one. Maybe you've got a better name for us. There's plenty out there.
Name the babies. Name the babies.
We hope you have a wonderful night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Have a good one.